Hamster. Okay. Seems like we're live. Actually, it's like I was hoping for like bells and whistles, and like you are live, or something like that.
We're here, streaming away.
Yeah. So basically, for the one person who might be listening to us at the start of this, let's just want to present myself, introduce myself. I'm Mike Marleau. Mike Marleau, or Michel Marleau, whichever you want to refer me as. I basically handle coast to coast development for MicroAge Canada, which is a franchise network. And I'm also known as the MicroAge guy, and you might have seen this guy. On some other places on LinkedIn, so I'll give him a like whenever you see him. But basically, I do represent MicroAge, and I wanted to produce. I'll dive into why I produced this MSP Talk segment a bit later. But first off, I wanted to introduce my wingman, my partner in crime, Shane Gibson. And maybe, Shane, you can introduce yourself real quick.
Thanks, Michel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a sales author, keynote speaker, trainer, and have been working in the space for over 20 years on 5 continents, working with all kinds of organizations, from IT-focused organizations to financial services to fintech to automotive to you name it, on improving their sales performance. And of course, I also wrote 2 books on social media marketing with a couple co-authors. One was Stephen Jagger, and the other one was Jay Conrad Levinson. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, that's awesome. I did not know about the book, though, man. You just so I'm already learning right off the bat. I didn't
Excellent.
know about that piece. Tell me something real quick. What drives you? What's really passionate? Is it like the sales process, the sales aspect, marketing? You know?
I think at the end of the day, what drives me, at least in working with organizations, is to get them to shift from thinking transactionally in selling and marketing and into the long game of sales and marketing, about really building a community value, lifetime value, and really moving away from the pitch, in my opinion. And so that's what I'm focused on. It doesn't mean you can't succeed without being a pitch artist, but for me, that doesn't resonate with my view of humanity doing business and long-term scalability of your business. So that's what I'm passionate about in a nutshell. Helping people be that way, authentic brands.
Oh, you just took away my pitch, my reason, my passion. You actually put in that word scalability, which I think is really important. First off, listen, this is the first time on LinkedIn Live. All right. So sorry about a couple of bugs, a little bit of nervousness, first time. And actually, it's only fitting that Shane be my first guest, because we touched base a couple of weeks back that I've been trying to. I applied for LinkedIn Live to get on this platform a while back, and I applied a couple of times, and I noticed that Shane gave it a shot. So I figure, you know what, maybe I can help a brother out, and and it's only fitting that he's my first guest on this.
Yeah, I haven't been approved for LinkedIn Live yet. I'm not sure why. It might be some of my criticisms of LinkedIn. I don't know.
Let's not go there.
I'm a big promoter. I've been on LinkedIn since 2003 and teaching sales organizations how to use it pretty well since then. And so it's. But with that said, the platform has really changed, and it's pretty exciting, the fact that we can get on here and it's not just a bunch of boring resumes connected with each other. It's actually a very live, multimedia, engaging platform for thought leadership and building those communities. And so I'm pretty excited about it. And totally, all jokes aside, I think you're the perfect guy to be running LinkedIn Live sessions for the MSP vertical. Hey, for those just kind of like jumping in here, for those people who, like, I've got a lot of connections here as well, and you do, that not necessarily know what MSP is. Maybe we want to like take a step back and kind of let them know.
Okay. No, that's good. Well, first off, well, actually, let's introduce basically MSP Talk, managed service providers, right? Like a lot of IT service suppliers call themselves MSPs today. A couple of years ago was VARs, value-added resellers. But at the end of the day, they're all IT service suppliers.
Yes.
Whether it's managed services, which is a different segment, it's part of the overall value proposition of a modern IT reseller when you're dealing with the SMB space, unless you're specialized on one particular vertical with one specific your claim to fame. If you have um, an ERP solution, you're very specific. But when you're
Yes.
catering to the SMB market, it's all about diversity, and you have to be that one throat to choke, that one call to make to one supplier that can handle procurement, that can handle service, that can maintain and educate your people, and also be there as your trusted business advisor.
Yeah.
So MSP, somehow there's different versions and definitions about it, but that's my own.
That's a great one.
I see managed services as being part of the overall delivery of the IT services. But however, everybody's had some sort of their own definition of managed services because it's not a known quantity. It's not like basically, all right, I built it. Okay, this is the perfect parameters. Here is what is managed services defined. The problem is it's always evolving. It's a moving target. You're always trying to make it better, so there's so many different intricacies of it. But I'm getting too deep into that piece.
But I think it's an important thing to talk about because
Yep.
from this perspective, I really think, and this goes back to my sales outlook, is two things. We are all tech companies and we are all media companies. And so you need the both of them, right? And so if you're not, your primary business you don't think is tech, you either have to really get good at it or you need to surround people who can build comprehensive solutions for you to run your business, like an MSP, right? And so that will be my kind of thought process on it, is that you need both of those things happening, right? And you need to be a media company and you need to be a tech company. And then, of course, being a little biased, I believe that you need to be a sales focused organization, right?
Exactly. That was I think that's the good takeaway, because at the end of the day, when you're servicing people, when you're servicing companies, especially in the SMB market, you're servicing people, right?
Yeah.
And in the last couple of years, actually in the last couple of months, it's even gotten this thing has taken on a whole new meaning. The last 3 months. Let's not dive into COVID-19 and what the impact is. However, we've seen the shift go from servicing devices, maintaining infrastructure, to all of a sudden servicing users. That the ground has shifted, because now all of a sudden their priorities have changed. We've become like work from home experts. Right?
Well, and this is the key, is that we are now in a digital first sales environment and marketing environment, where digital was an afterthought for some people. They're like, I've got a bricks and mortar store, or my salespeople like to get in their car and drive to the factories that we sell our widgets to. And now that is a secondary channel, and the primary channel at this point, and I think will remain to be so, especially for those of the people who sell over borders, is going to be a digital first sales strategy. And that is something that really is important to wrap our head around. And I think the sooner we can come to that realization and stop wishing that it will go back to the way it was, the sooner we can succeed. Even who your ideal customer was 120 days ago, that has changed. Like you got to use that as a learning. Not all of them are out of business, but there is other markets with bigger opportunities.
Oh, there's so many opportunities right now.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, that's the thing. The ground is shifting for MSPs and VARs that are basically wanting to. They have to be mindful and adapt. But you know what? IT's always been about adapting. I mean, it's always been changing. The definition of IT services today is really very much different than 5 years ago, where cybersecurity wasn't as big as a challenge. Then 10 years ago, when cloud first started, now it's basically being part of our delivery system. And 20 years ago was all about the server, the hardware, and everything. So it's always changing, right? So. But one thing actually ties into the main reason why I felt it was important to start this segment. As I spoke earlier, for my entire career, I've been in IT, but I don't consider myself an IT guy at all. I'm more about sales, management, and marketing. But I'm most passionate about helping people reach their goals, right? And I decided to start MSP Talk to address the overall complexities of running an MSP. I mean, there's lots of contents out there on tools provided by vendors. Excellent content too, by the way, excellent content. But I wanted to contribute by touching on different pieces that are all very important to the process. I mean, at the end of the day, running a business is like a juggling act. It's a never-ending trying to adjust your business, and running an IT service-based industry business is hard enough, but actually getting it to scale is one hell of a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's why I wanted to start MSP Talk, where it's going to be more about, like aim specifically at MSP and VAR owners, Canada only, no tech talk, but focus more on scalability. But scalability, for my definition, to have a scalable business, you have to be good at sales, marketing, operations, it's best practices, it's maintaining a steady and a good level of profitability. It's about budgeting. So many IT companies basically see sales as an objective, but don't necessarily quantify that objective. They don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily set like specific goals. That's important. A benchmarking aspect, and
Yeah.
also peer exchange. The importance of having a peer group to be able to bounce ideas off, right?
Yeah.
So for this first segment, for me, one aspect is lately I've been promoting a webinar in the last 2 months. I produced a webinar, and it was a lot about scalability in the MSP landscape or VAR aspect. And one thing I noticed is that through all that, I hardly touched base on sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been talking about scalability in IT and why it's such a challenge, but I haven't been addressing the sales aspect. And that's one reason why one of the first reason I thought about you for the segment was that you came at our MicroAge conference last year. You presented, and I've seen you a couple of times. Listen, we've been
Yeah.
part of the Channel Next circuit. We've touched on so many different places on the Channel Next across the country. I've been around almost every event for the last 3 years, right? And you've been a regular. But you did talk a lot about the sales process.
Yeah.
And how having a sales engine is paramount to profitable and sustainable growth.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to express how, and I got the feeling that basically we all have these sales. We try to recruit a sales star, a sales guru, someone who basically blow the top off of customers. But at the end of the day, is that doing us a disservice instead of trying to fixate on a sales process?
Mm-hmm.
And and I wanted to touch base and talk to you about that piece.
Yeah. Well, I think to start off with, there's a balance. Finding the right sales talent is where it starts. It was interesting. I'll give you a social media example. When I really got started off training sales organizations on how to use social media to engage the marketplace, generate leads, build relationships. And this goes back like 2009, Steve Jagger and I wrote the book Sociable. So this is like a decade ago. And you can imagine there was some serious resistance around from the marketing team in particular, and actually even the VPs of sales. Like, do we want our salespeople to be allowed to go on the internet and talk to people?
I remember those discussions.
And they're terrified of it, and they still are. And my answer was, if you don't trust your sales team to go on the internet and talk to customers, you don't have a social media problem. You have a human resource problem. You hired the wrong people. Or you've got the wrong leadership style where you can't actually lead these people to proper conversations and engagement, and being, ethical, viable, conversational people consistent with your brand on the internet. And so why I say this is that, you do need to hire the right people. So I don't want to downplay that. But with that said, is if you want to quickly become held ransom by a salesperson, just hire a great salesperson for your MSP. Don't manage them. Don't have a process. Let them run off and be, quote unquote, as we used to call them, cowboys, going out there and doing the Lone Ranger, going out and doing their own thing. And, just don't bother Fred, because Fred closes all our deals. I know he shows up late and he's rude in meetings, but he brings revenues in. So this is not a situation you want to be in where you're being held ransom by Fred. You want to hire a good salesperson, but at the end of the day, you want to have a system and a process to plug a good salesperson in where they can excel.
Mhm.
and where you can have leading indicators where, if I generate this many leads of this type inbound, and we walk them through this process, that we're going to have X revenues in 90 days. That can't happen by just hiring sales personalities. It has to happen with a sales process, right? It's a combination. But if you gave me the choice between over the long term, like I said when I started off with, I talked about long game. If I'm playing a long game in my sales success as an organization, and you said, here, I'm going to give you a star player who is a non-conformist and not a team player, or I'll give you two good players who are open to following a process and developing it with us, I'll take the two good players, because that's duplicatable and
Yeah.
scalable. I can take those two and turn them into 4 and 5 and 6, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a long answer to a short statement.
Oh, but
That's
it's
my belief structure, right? Is that you do need the right people, but you need the right people plugged into the right system. And that also comes down with the ethos of your sales culture as well. Is what is your sales culture? And
you have one.
superstar from one environment not fit with your organizational values as well. So there's a values match, right, that needs to happen. And
Oh, listen, you're right about this, that. I mean, I've been part of organizations where I was part of a sales pit with 10 reps.
yeah.
And well, rolling back the clock here, that was actually before it was a couple of many years ago, but it was a camaraderie about it, right?
Mhm.
And the let's just say that the culture was contingent. I'm sorry, sometimes my English gets problematic.
Your English is 1,000 times better than my French. I'm not
Well,
even going to
I
try.
hope so.
So I appreciate your multilingual capacities, my friend.
All right. So, but one thing it was conducive. Okay, basically the culture that we had, the camaraderie was conducive to us working together in some way,
Mhm.
shape, or form. Then I was part of another organization where there was an alpha male mentality. There was
Yeah.
an alpha male aspect where top-notch sales reps would get threatened, and somehow I always got the feeling that it was top down. It was.
Yeah, and that's interesting because this is really changing. I don't have the article in front of me, but there was a couple in-depth studies and articles recently released that show that women salespeople, although they make up a lower number in proportion of salespeople, and many are paid less than they should be compared to their male counterparts,
Yeah.
actually achieve quota more.
Hmm. Oh.
And so I think this is a really interesting perspective, is that the top-down alpha male dominated sales culture, its time has passed.
Yeah.
And I think the day of the sales bro, pardon the term, is over. And the quicker we can usher it out, the better. And I think that a more empathetic, team-oriented sales culture is, again, part of the long game. And it's one that's inclusive. And so I think that that's a really important part of the sales culture that we're building, right?
But hold on a second. That gets me to another point. Let's just say that, listen, I've spoken to many, many MSP owners. It's what I do. It's what I try
Yeah.
to do, and try to get as deep in conversations as I can, and of all different shapes and sizes. And most MSPs out there, and I'm pretty sure, guys, if I don't know, I don't even know if I have a chat feature on this thing,
Yeah.
so anybody can chime in, or actually
Yes.
don't chime in. If you don't get any answer, it's because I didn't find the button, right?
Gotcha.
However, most MSPs are a bit smaller MSPs, and it's a lot about owner-led sales, right?
Yeah.
It's where the owner takes the emphasis of the sales and is. I'm hearing myself in the background. Is it? Are you on? Am I on speaker with you? No. Okay. I just forget it.
You're on speaker with me. You
Yeah.
are. I
Okay.
can turn that down a bit.
No,
Is
no.
that
It just came up now all of a sudden. That's fine.
okay?
That's okay. So basically, one thing is a lot typical size of MSPs where the owner eventually represents sometimes 80% of the sales, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a bottleneck, but it begs but the next question is, let's say you're trying to set up a sales culture and a sales process, but you're starting off with one guy. You're
Mhm.
bringing on one guy,
Yeah.
whether it's one guy where you hire him for his contacts, for his expertise, and you say, "Hey, man, do what you must and get this thing off the road. Start selling," or you hire someone green and you have to speak the energy. But the thing is, an owner, by definition, doesn't necessarily have a sales process to be able to be good at sales. What
Yeah.
talk about that challenge? Is that
Yeah, I mean,
come
this is
across?
one of the things that I deal with on a regular basis with many organizations, not just one person shops either. I walk into sales organizations that have, they got 10, 12 salespeople rocking along, and you ask them, what's your sales process? And you talk to 10, 12 of them, and they'll have the same steps roughly defined. But when you see what they do within those steps or what they think is exceptional within each of these steps, totally different definition. Then you ask them, who's your ideal client? Different answers. Then you go ask the marketing team, hey, who's your ideal client? And they'll have a different answer than the sales team. And so this is like the lack of alignment's a big one. And a true sales process that's templated and playbooked, which is really what you need to scale, isn't there. So it's not just, let's not just beat up on the individual, like one person owners, so to speak.
No.
It's within many organizations. And so with that owner, what I would suggest is you've got to look at what steps you're following unofficially, usually in the top of your head, template them, and think about the best practices that work within that aren't based upon your personality. See, when I go into an organization to help them develop sales process, I may go around and follow their top 30% of the reps in a particular branch. Maybe they got 30 salespeople. I'll follow 10 of them around for a couple of weeks. I'll watch their sales process. I'll watch how they handle questions. I'll see how they manage their emails, how they do their social selling. And I'm looking at common steps within the team that are best practices that are working.
Okay.
And then we want to bottle those. And anything that's personality based, like some sales professionals can say things because they're witty, because they're funny, because they're bold, that actually won't work for the rest of the team.
It doesn't sound good on some other
people.
people.
That stuff, I take it out. And then there's things that a founder does of a company that because they've got the title CEO and that they're head of the Rotary Club, they can do that a salesperson can't. Yeah. So they also have to have some empathy for their team and look at building a process that works for everybody. So that's part of it is templating that process. And then when I'm working with organizations, sometimes we realize that there isn't a best practice. So I've got a good idea of what some of the best practices are for many organizations, outbound and inbound and sales, depending on the industry. And sometimes I'll find gaping holes in their process, which is why they're not having the win rates they need. And sometimes you need to borrow outside processes that are benchmarked and proven and make them your own, right? That's another part of building a process. So you can, and that's a lot of times why people hire sales consultants or prescribe to a specific type of sales methodology, is what they're in essence is buying almost a sales franchise model, right? Okay. Where they know if they follow this, it's worked for, X hundreds of organizations, right? But you still need to make it your own. So a bit of a rant there for you, but yeah, by the way, though, as a founder, the founder, in my opinion, should always be the chief sales officer. Yeah. They are the voice of the business. They should be on social media, sharing their thought leadership on their industry. They should be leading their team. They should be the voice and the brand of their organization, and they should help close really big deals. But they shouldn't necessarily be down there doing the daily stuff. And you need a process to make sure you've got a team that can perpetuate your sales strategy without you being the bottleneck as a CEO or a founder, right? Mm-hmm. Anything where you have to approve it and sign off on it and slow stuff down, you've got to find a process to replace that. Otherwise, you'll never scale, right? Yeah,
I heard something before. By definition, anything an owner does shouldn't be replicable. Can't be replicable. If it is, you got to find a way to build a process around it.
Absolutely. That's a great piece, right? So if you're doing stuff that's duplicatable, or, I like to, when I talk about artificial intelligence in sales, the great thing about AI is it takes anything left brain. So, where it really is about, it's cut and paste. It's if they do this, I do that, all that type of stuff you can automate and use AI for, so that you as a salesperson and as a sales organization can spend more time doing the stuff that can't be automated, which is build relationships, connect with people, listen, customize solutions. These are all things that you should be spending time on, not cutting and pasting emails. That's what your CRM or your marketing automation platform should do for you. And that's another part of scaling, is that if it's all manual or it's all cut and paste, if your sales team, if most of their day is spent cutting and pasting emails to people, rinse and repeat, and using the same script over and over again, then it doesn't work. That's not what you want to be focused on, right? You want to be focused on the stuff that can't be scaled. That's the stuff you want your salespeople doing. The rest, this is where you're going to harness technology that ideally your MSP is helping you find, right?
Well, the rest should be nurturing lead campaigns and basically just trying to get that conversation, get something. I hate to say nibble, but it's the case, and try to get something. And it brings me to basically, you're talking about automating some of the process. And we talked about before about the number of touch points actually required. And no wonder, can you dive into that basically in terms, because right now not a problem, but there's different mediums. So there's not only is it harder to get someone's attention, but there's so many different ways to get that attention. And managing, I mean, it's probably easy enough to manage a string of emails, right? And say, okay, let's map out our email funnel and our newsletter and see where it goes. But the thing is, I mean, you've got LinkedIn, you've got phone calls, you've got Twitter, you got YouTube clips that might generate some interest in everything. And can you, is it complicated these days to actually manage multiple platforms like this?
I think it's complicated so my first thought is you can't boil the ocean. You have to figure out like what bucket you're going to boil, so to speak. And I saw Noah and Lewis have chimed in here. So hello there. Good to see you. I'm glad you kind of agree with that sentiment. You can't boil the ocean. So when it starts off with lead nurturing and follow-up, you have to define, number one, this is one of the big parts of sales process I start with before we get into all the exciting things like using social selling or outreach strategies or building rapport, is who are your ideal client segments? So can you truly define what an A category customer and prospect is? That's the 20% that give you 80% of your business potential. And so from that perspective, you want to start there. So then now you don't have like 2,000 LinkedIn connections that you're trying to do a drip program with. You got your top, 20 or 10%. You might have over a year, 110 to 180 people that you've identified as an ideal client you want to retain and grow, or one you want to attract. And then you layer in a frequency of contact program. And that program should be multiple mediums. It shouldn't just be email. It should be email and LinkedIn and phone and invites and value-added swag, sending them the little MicroAge guy in the mail, whatever that might be, but it has to be a series of touches. In the B2B space, tools that really create deeper engagement and value, research and white papers and these types of true how-tos that can help people grow their business, for instance, are really valuable. So as I digress, number one, you can't do that with 2,000 to 3,000 people well. It has to be contextualized and personalized, and you need to know what your A's are. So that's the first part. And then the other one is, you need a CRM to manage that. Whether you're using Nimble, I use Nimble CRM, or Michel, which platform do you use again? You use a pretty cool
Soho.
Soho. So Soho works well for them. Salesforce, if I was going to use Salesforce, it's a bit of a monster. And so I would want to combine it with something like SalesLoft, which then I can sales workflow and map it and make it easier for my team to follow a duplicatable process, but involves triggering multiple touches over time that are all value added. And that's a really important piece, is never ever pick up the phone, send an email, message someone on LinkedIn, you name it, unless you know exactly how it's going to add value and be totally personalized for them. Otherwise, you're just noise, to be honest. It becomes about you wanting to hit your quota instead of you wanting to help them, right? And that's the big difference, right?
Okay, no, it breaks it down quite easily. At the end of the day, to have an objective before you pick up the phone, right? You get someone that calls you back or just sends you back an email, might be interested in looking at that. Okay, before you tackled it, it's more about saying, okay, what would be a reasonable objective, and have that in mind. And
it should be illegal within sales organizations for the subject to say just touching base on an email. Just my personal.
I agree.
Oh man! And if you're just touching base, send them a LinkedIn message or a Facebook message and say, "Hey, what's up?" like honestly, think about it. Hey, not just touching base. Hey, I observed some changes, or I had a couple thoughts for you. and then talk about them, what you observed and how you thought you could help their business, and what you're curious about and how are things going for them. And these types of focuses that are contextualized for the individual and are very specific and non-pitchy. If it looks like it's been written by the marketing department and cut and paste by the sales team, you've already failed. That's my my big piece there.
So it's all about the customer, right?
Yeah.
It's all about touching base with someone and having, well, the 80-20 rule also applies to be able to say, 80% listening, which
Absolutely.
I always struggle with, I must admit. First guy to not follow through on that, but it's about being able to connect with what your customer.
Well, that's why we have fun when we hang out at the conferences, Michel, is you and I have a talking contest, right? So it's like, who's got the best story, right?
Okay. Yeah, then you come to a point where you say, okay, I've had enough. I want to go to my hotel room.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking too much.
Absolutely. So you talked about follow-up there, and I had a thought I wanted to share around, when do you give up on a lead, and then, what does it take to really convert a lead? So a couple of things. There was a lead response study done a while back, and the name of the company is missing, but it was some pretty deep data. It was several thousand phone conversations, follow-ups, and emails with hundreds of clients with a large sales team. And what they found was that, there is a diminishing return on effort. So once you've attempted 6 to 7 value-added follow-ups at varied and medium, from phone to email to direct message to text to a series of combined mediums to connect with somebody who maybe filled out a lead form or that you want to reach. After about the 7th to 9th attempt, there's really no return on investment in most cases. Okay, so your 6 to 7 within the first couple of weeks seems to be the big piece. At least this is what's been shared with me from a data perspective.
Okay.
But what's interesting is the average salesperson in that study quit between the second and third attempt. Yeah. And that only equated to less than half of the potential people that would enter your sales funnel will do it within those 2 to 3 attempts. The rest are going to do it from attempt 4 through 7, maybe even 9, depending on the industry. So if you want to be above average, just follow up uniquely 6 to 7 times, and you'll have a funnel twice the size of the person who quits on the second or third attempt. Now, what's interesting, and this is a little bit less scientific, is I've been teaching a online sales certification program since 2012 in partnership with Langara College. It's called the Professional Sales Certificate Program. And one of the assignments we have students do as they go through the program is they have to look at the last 5 clients they landed, and then they have to track how many touches they did and what type of touches they were, from hello to conversion. So after you actually say, "Hi, Shane, I acknowledge you exist," like you answer one of my emails, right?
Okay.
Then
I'm all happy. So
now I'm willing to talk to you. Like, let's have a conversation. It still takes, and I've done this now with probably 400 different salespeople who've submitted their strategies to me. And the average is between 8 and 12 value-added interactions from yes, I'll talk to you, to conversion. So you need to manage that. You can't just do it off the top of your head or with post-it notes on the side of your computer. It needs to be in a CRM, and you need to be tracking this cadence, and you need to know.
Yeah, the cadence is the hardest piece to track. I mean, just with so many daily things. I mean, you're interested as a human being. You're interested in the next shiny thing. So even as a sales rep, you start going down in one road with a couple of prospects you have good discussions with. Then all of a sudden, you gave up on the touch point you were supposed to do. And even if you put some Post-its with little reminders in your Outlook calendar that says, "Oh, call back this guy on this date."
Well, it needs to pop up, and you need to pre-plan what your step is.
Yeah.
So for instance, touch 5, if the deal stalls, what are the 3 pieces of collateral material I have to send through to this type of prospect in this vertical that me and the marketing team already built, right? So like for each, if you want to talk about how marketing can help in sales enablement, it's understanding the steps of the sales funnel and what type of content is needed at each step for each market segment. That's what I'd be having a marketing team focus on as far as helping a sales team with, or an external team, right? And this is why you need to, again, focus, not boil the ocean, so your stuff's relevant.
Yeah. And let's talk about, go back to your A, B's, and C's, right?
Yep.
Within your sales process. I mean, I'm pretty sure when it comes to A, B's, and C's, it's all a question about how much energy you're going to put on each, right? But
Yeah,
also touches on the cadence, touches on the material, or
100%. So it's all an ROI and ROR model. So return on investment and return on relationship, because I think that that's a key piece. So the A's, if you were to look at like kind of A's up here, B's and C's, right? So your A's are your 20 percenters. I like to call them absolutes. And you even got double A's and triple A's, and they're going to give you 80% of your results. They tend to be bigger clients. They require more personal attention, but they're higher yield. Then as you move down to B's, I consider them beneficial. So they're nice to have clients. You'll have a whole bunch of them. They don't order as much. They don't order as frequently. They might take a bit longer to pay. Maybe they need more customization, so your cost is higher. Okay. But there's a bunch of them. And then your C's are convenient. So they tend to be low profitability. In the IT business, they tend to be break and fix clients, or people who come for you for one solution, not a large solution. And so my goal, number one, is my C's as a non-proactive model. I actually don't want to encourage them to show up, because if I have too many C's, they'll put me out of business. These are the people who Google who can help me fix my computer, and then they call you and spend an hour with you on the phone, and you make $70. And that, that's not what you want. So my goal is, with my cadence, is my A's, it's highly personalized, it's high frequency, and it's high value. I put a ton of time in. B's, a little bit less personalized, more automation, less frequency. C, I throw them in a lead nurturing program, and I have tools on my website through e-commerce that enables them to self-serve if they're going to work with me at all. That is, or I literally write my content on my website and I quote in a way that it repels C's. And that's, but my frequency and proactivity has to be in the A zone. If you have a choice of who you're prospecting or following up with, has to be in that A zone. And A isn't necessarily the biggest company out there. An A is an ideal client, is
a
not
cultural
one,
fit, could be an alignment, could be basically that their needs specifically align with what your strengths are, what you're providing, where it can be seamless. I mean, there's a lot of MSPs today that once they get to a point, a certain level of maturity, they have to fire customers, right?
Absolutely.
They have to fire, because basically there's just too much noise. It just comes in and it makes them less efficient. So they're not able to properly service those A's, those B's, and the ones that are actually paying on a monthly basis. And you want to be at a certain point, you want to be able to raise the invoice. You want to be in a position to get more out of your existing client base, and that will come through, aligning yourself more with their needs and bringing more value.
So kind of my final thought on this conversation here, just to kind of wrap things up mentally around this, is it's also very dangerous to only have one or two A's and have them be most of your business, which happens a lot with small businesses.
Yeah.
So part of it is we need to make sure that our A isn't a behemoth. And if they are, we need to grow our business so that we can have 7 more A's, because they'll come and go. And if you scale and create expenses and structure around supporting 1 or 2 big clients, you're not actually in business. You're in a deal. A business is where you've got multiple clients. And that's where the B's are important too, because although you got a couple of big A's, you can charge the B's some premiums, and maybe you got a lesser solution for them or smaller revenues, but you've got a bunch of them. So you actually need your A's and your B's, and make sure you're not a 1 client or 3 client show. You've got to have that right ratio, right? Where 20% of your clients are A's, right? And the rest are B's, but you're managing it, right? So that's my final thought on that piece of the process.
Oh, cool. Well, listen, this has been great. I think we took on more. Initially, we thought about keeping it a bit short. We're up to 40 minutes now. But one last thing I want to ask you, though. Okay, one thing I always have to relearn. Okay, I've relearned this through years and years of sales, basically anything about the sales process, is how important it is to get out of the sales, identify right off the bat as soon as possible where it's going to be a fit or not.
Yeah.
Where a lot of sales reps well, sales rep. I mean, you're a sales rep. You're a go-getter, and you keep on harping on one customer when it's much more important to be able ahead of this at the first discovery call or the first discussions to be able to identify this guy is going to be time suckage.
Yeah. So two things. Salespeople do that when their funnel is empty, when they don't have enough leads. So they're trying to make a morsel into a meal, and that's one of the issues. Or they wrote down in their sales funnel it's going to be a 20 grand deal, when the reality is the likelihood of it converting because there isn't a fit, or them even spending that money, is low. So now they got this funnel that looks like $1 million, but it's actually $100,000 funnel, and things aren't moving because there isn't a fit. So I think number one is knowing who your A's are, again, really honestly knowing what they are, and then prospecting enough and having enough inbound marketing happening as well that your funnel is full. So you don't have to be worried that, oh, if I write them and quote them the full level and tell them how we work with people, I might lose them. Yes, part of your sales process is actually to get prospects to self-eject, not to convert everyone. And it has to be alignment with your profitability model and your strategic direction, right? So that is the piece. So if you're too needy with a prospect, or you're trying to over convert them and you're giving them too much attention, go out and prospect. Develop an inbound lead strategy, because it's obvious we're coming from a scarcity mentality perspective, right? So that would be my thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome. So listen, I mean, I think maybe we can wrap it up. Listen, it's been great. I mean, I could go on and on about the subject in terms of sales, in terms of process. I mean, from my experience, listen, this was way back, but I started using a CRM before I even knew it was called a CRM.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember then where all of a sudden in that sales bit that I was talking about, it was all, what are you doing that for? Well, it makes me more efficient. I'm able to, and somehow, and that's why I get passionate about that piece. And even today there's so many tools out there to be able to be more proactive, to be able to convert better and utilize. But again, it's all about being able to map it out. I think that you addressed it well in terms of being able to identify your ideal customer, identify and categorize your customers, but also your process, what you're good at, what you need to focus on. But I mean, I like the fact that you're telling me that it takes 9 or 10 touches just to, on an average, to get a good contact with someone. That's an eye opener, especially if you when you look at the sales reps that pull out after only a couple of tries.
Yeah, that sweet spot is 3 to 7.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So thanks. Listen, thanks for joining
Michel.
in. Shane, I'm definitely gonna have you back at a certain point, because
let's do this again for sure.
I want a second part to that for sure. So I want to thank everybody for joining in, and maybe come back again next time. I'll try to get a few more guests on different aspects about running in an MSP. All right, and Shane, you did a great job. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Michel. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
All right.